Good evening, class. It's Mrs. Albright, and tonight we're working on Module 6, Lesson 8. And our objective is to use our understanding of fraction equivalence to write decimal numbers in a place value chart. And the fractions we will be encountering will be expressed in different ways. So some might be mixed units or mixed numbers, and some might be improper fractions. In this example, I'm going to start by shading in some of these area models. And I know that this area model represents one whole and it is broken into 10 parts. I'm going to start shading in this entire area model. And I'm going to shade in one more. And then on this one, I'm not going to shade in the whole thing. I'm just going to shade in 1, 2, 3, 4 of those bars. So if we were to write this in expanded form, here I would have 10 tenths plus 10 tenths plus 4 tenths. So altogether, if I add this up, I have 10, 20, 24 tenths. Okay, so to write this as a decimal, we need our place value chart to help us. So we're going to make a place value chart over here. Here I've got hundredths. I'm going to abbreviate this, tenths, and my ones. Here's my decimal point right there. So in this problem, I have 24 tenths. Well, we know that I cannot write 24 there. What I can do is model this with number discs and show that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 of those. Now, once I get groups of 10, just like with the place value that we've been working with on the larger end of our place value chart, we can do that with our smaller numbers as well. So here I can bundle my groups of 10. So I have one group of 10, two groups of 10. And what I do with those after I bundle them is I can move them over here to my ones. So these 10 tens become 1, 1. These 10 tens become 1, 1 as well. So altogether I have 2 ones. I have 4 leftover tenths. So in decimal form, this is written as 2 whole, or I'm sorry, in fraction form, 2 whole and 4 tenths. In decimal form, 2 and 4 tenths. Okay, here I have the same model that I've drawn as in the previous slide. The only thing I've changed is that I have now decomposed each of these wholes into hundredths. So instead of having 10 tenths, I have 100 100ths in each of these wholes. So this box is 100 hundredths. This whole also has 100 hundredths. And then in my last one, and I can count by tens to help do this faster, I've got 10, 20, 30, 40 hundredths. So altogether, I have 240 hundredths. So if we want to think about how to write this as a decimal and a fraction, we want to think about how many wholes we have and then the leftover parts. So as a fraction, if I look at this as wholes, this makes up one whole, this makes up one whole. So really, this would be 240 over 100. We've already learned how to make mixed numbers, so I can decompose this as 100 hundredths, 100 hundredths, and 40 hundredths, and I can rewrite that as 2 whole and 40 hundredths. I can also use a place value chart, my ones, tenths, and my hundredths. Now I can't write 40 in this box. I can only put one digit in each column of the place value chart. I already know that I have 2 whole, so I'm going to go ahead and write my 2 whole in my ones column. But those 40 hundredths, just like what we did on the previous slide, if I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. If I have 40 hundredths, I can bundle these in groups of 10. So there's one group of 10, 2, 3. I have 4 groups of 10. So each of these get brought over to my tenths column. So instead of 40 hundredths, I can regroup it and look at this as 40 tenths. And you can see in this area model that I have 4 of these 10 bars colored in. So as a decimal, I would write this as 2 whole and 40 hundredths, which is the same as the decimal I came up with on the previous page, 2 whole and 4 tenths. Those have the same value. Just like 2 and 40 hundredths, or as a fraction, I could rewrite this 40 hundredth as 4 tenths. Those would be equal amounts. If I wanted to decompose these numbers into smaller units, I would look at this number and I would read this number as 3 and 6 tenths. We can put it in unit form, 3 ones, 6 tenths. I want to ask myself how many tenths are in 3 and 6 tenths. Now, a lot of you are going to jump and say there are 6 tenths, but that's not really the case. If I put this on my place value chart, again, here's my tenths, here's my ones. I'm going to model this number. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 6 tenths. If I really wanted to regroup this, I would have to take this one and move it over here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would take this one and regroup it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I would take this one and regroup it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the correct answer to the question, how many tenths are in 3 and 6 tenths, is really 36. I've got 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. And that's because my 3 ones is equal to 30 tenths. And then I add the 6 tenths that I already started with. So let's take that same number, 3 and 6 tenths, but now my question is, how many hundredths? So if I were to put this on a place value chart, here's my decimal point. So I have my ones, tenths, and hundredths. And I'm using abbreviations there, but this is tenths and hundredths. If I have 3 ones and 6 tenths, I want to regroup these to hundredths. So every single one, first of all, I would have to regroup these ones as tenths. So my 3 ones would turn into 30 hundredths or 30 tenths over here. But think about how many hundredths are in 1 1, and the correct answer is 100. So each of these 3 would turn into 3 hundredths over here. If we take these 3 and we want to multiply by 100, because there are 100 hundredths in each one, this would end up being 300 hundredths. And then these 6 tenths we would multiply by 10, because there are 10 tenths in, or I'm sorry, there are 10 hundredths in each tenth. And so this would end up becoming 60 hundredths. So all of this together would be 360. So 3 and 6 tenths is equal to 360 hundredths. If we look at that as a fraction, which we've also already studied fraction equivalence, if I write 3 and 6 tenths as a decimal, I can turn this into improper form, or into an improper fraction, so that it's 36 tenths. And then if I use my fraction equivalence, I'm going to multiply the bottom by 10 and the top by 10. So 36 by 10 is 360. 10 times 10 is 100. So there we have our final answer of 360 hundredths. I'm going to do one more example of this with another decimal. Here we have 12 and 5 tenths. The first thing I want to do is write this as a fraction. So I can write this as 12 and 5 tenths. To put this as a mixed number, I want to think about what is 12 times 10. And 12 times 1 is 12, so 12 times 110 is 120. And then I'm going to add that to the 5 tenths that I already have. So as a mixed number, this is 125 tenths. So it's pretty simple to write this as decimal form. The number 12 and 5 tenths has 125 tenths. So the next step is to ask, how many hundredths is that? So if I take my improper fraction, 125 tenths, and I want to turn that into hundredths, I know that 10, I need to multiply that by 10 because there are 10 tenths in each hundredth. So whatever I do to the bottom, I'm going to do to the top. So 125 times 10, I know 125 times 1 stays the same, 125. All I'm going to do is add the 0. So that makes it 1,250. So the correct answer to this, in 12 and 5 tenths, we have 1,250 hundredths. Next quiz question, 9 and 7 tenths equals, I want you to give me your answer as a mixed number fraction. Tell me how many tenths are in that number and how many hundredths are in that number. Make sure you go back and rewatch the video so that you know exactly what I am looking for. Last question, 68 and 5 tenths. Write that as a mixed number fraction. Tell me how many tenths and how many hundredths. And remember, if you get stuck or if you're feeling lost and confused, don't worry about it. This is our first lesson on this material. Bring your questions back to class. We will work on it tomorrow morning. Have a great night.